Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another sutta study this morning with Ayya Suvijjana here at MT Cloud Monastery. So this morning we'll be taking a look at a sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya, and if you'd like to follow along, you can click the link in the live chat to see Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. And good morning so far to Jens, Ayya Vimalanyani. Good to see you, Venerable, as well as Kauser Friend, Gita, Kumu, and Kyle. And hello as well to all of those watching, but not typing in anything at the moment. So at this time, I'll pass things over to Ayya Suvijjana for this morning's Dhamma talk.
Thank you to the venerables here for inviting me again. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutam dhammam sangham namasami. Well, I chose this sutta, I don't know, some weeks ago I was invited to speak, so this sutta stood out for me for some reason. But I'm realizing that in monastic training, one of the things that's emphasized for novices, first thing is to follow the patimokkha, the restraint of the patimokkha, and the second is the restraint of the sense faculties. So we just had a change of lineage, and so we have a new, not so new, but transformed, I guess, novice, and now in the Theravada robes and starting the Theravada training. So this is very significant at the beginning of the path, but throughout the path. Even Sekas, before arhatship, there's a sutta for the Sekas, and the restraint of the sense faculties was mentioned there. But it's like it gets more and more refined as we go along. And what strikes me about this sutta is Untamed, Unguarded is the name of the sutta. I have the Pali in front of me. Adanta Agunta Sutta. So I'll start reading it, and then I'll start talking about some of the things that are that stand out or that seem significant about this. At Savatthi, and then the Blessed One addresses the bhikkhus. We're assuming it's the Buddha. Says it doesn't mention anybody else, doesn't mention another disciple of the Buddha. At Savatthi, bhikkhus, these 6 bases for contact, if untamed, unguarded, unprotected, unrestrained, are bringers of suffering. What 6? So before we go into which 6, it's here it's pasayatana. This is a pasayatana. This is the contact at the basis. Salayatana is 6 bases. And so for some reason, the emphasis on phassa, the emphasis on contact is being brought out here. And I think this is having to do with more refined working with the guarding or protecting the senses, to really putting the focus on contact. So often with the six sense bases, when they talk about them as six, the faculties, then it talks about, well, it does talk about guarding, but it talks about the unwholesome states potentially arising at these six sense bases. So it's like kind of bringing the attention further back than what's arising when there's contact, but to the contact itself. So if unprotected, untamed, unguarded, unrestrained, they're bringers of suffering. So what's six? The I, bhikkhus, as a base for contact, if untamed, unguarded, unprotected, unrestrained, is a bringer of suffering. The ear as a base for contact, the mind as a base for contact, is a bringer of suffering. These six bases for contact, if untamed, unguarded, unprotected, unrestrained, are bringers of suffering. So this reminds me of another sutta of the six animals, and there's a simile of the six animals, and a lot of you are familiar with it, I think. But there's a man who has captured six different kinds of animals, and there's like a crocodile, a monkey, a bird, a snake, a dog, a jackal. Did I mention bird? Yeah. So they all have different domains, and they want to go to the different domains. So initially, they all have ropes that are tethering them, and they're all tied together in one knot. Each separate animal attached to a different rope, tied at the middle, and then they start wanting to go to their domain. You know, the bird wants to fly up into the sky, and the monkey wants to go to the trees, a forest, and so they're all pulling. The crocodile wants to go to the water. They're all pulling in different directions, and the strongest one prevails and drags. The other ones get exhausted, and the strongest one, I imagine, the crocodile, dragging them all along. So this is the untamed, unguarded sense faculties. So we can relate to, like, the eye seeing something and wanting it, going after the sense pleasure at the eye, but I guess that if it's the strongest, like if the strongest is for taste, and we see, they all kind of actually work together, I think, because like you see something that reminds you, that's the mind door, and then there's the food that's appealing, and so then you go for it whether you really need it or not, and it can be for other sites, and we can get ourselves in really serious trouble if we're just totally untamed, unguarded, and it's not oppression, really. If we think about it, when we're raised as children, then our parents teach a certain amount of restraint, and it's for our own benefit. If we're just grabbing things, then we might become a thief. Whatever we want, we just grab. So it's for our protection. And in the Buddha's teaching, it's to protect the mind, to protect our minds, because in Indriya Samvara, it talks about if the eye faculty or any of the faculties are left unguarded, then unwholesome states arise of greed or hatred. So this is protecting our mind. So the eye, because as a base for contact, if well tamed, well guarded, well protected, well restrained, is a bringer of happiness. The ear as a base for contact, the mind, again, there's the ellipsis, through all the sense bases, the ear, the tongue, the nose, the body, the mind as a base for contact. If well tamed, well guarded, well protected, well restrained, are bringers of happiness. So there was I was thinking about Tanisebo's talk about what we starve and what we nourish. So if we starve the unwholesome mental states by not just following our craving, not being a slave to craving, then we're purifying the mind and we're allowing for more subtle, wholesome states to arise at different happiness other than based on the senses. So this is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said this. And then he goes into verse. Just 6, O bhikkhus, are the bases for contact, where one unrestrained meets with suffering. Those who know how to restrain them dwell uncorrupted with faith, their partner. So this is interesting. The faith is the partner. So really having faith in the path and the path unfolding, and we start working with abandoning, guarding, and it's actually 4 right efforts. At first 2, we guard against the arising of the unwholesome, and we abandon the unwholesome if we see it arising. So just having faith in this process, faith in the Buddha's teaching, and that's it reinforces or supports the work we're doing. Having seen forms that delight the mind, and having seen those that give no delight, dispel the path of lust towards the delightful, and do not soil the mind by thinking the other is displeasing to me. So that's... So even though the delight might arise in the mind, we don't need to allow lust to arise. So just being aware of what's pleasant and unpleasant, also neutral. This is in the realm of feeling or vedana. Often these feelings arise with contact, and we can just abandon the path. It says, dispel the path towards lust. So we can just be aware of the process, and then when we see desire arising, then we can let go of that. Or we may just be at pleasant feeling, just the pleasant feeling without having to grasp at it. Having heard sounds both pleasant and raucous, do not be enthralled with the pleasant sound. Dispel the course of hate towards the raucous. And do not soil the mind by thinking, this one is displeasing to me. So he's repeating that part about soiling the mind. And if you're a dosa type, if you're prone to anger or hatred, you can see how it's really, it really does soil the mind. It really does corrupt the mind. And we might notice one of the sense bases that predominantly we're having a desire, or predominantly we're having aversion. So for some people, sounds can be really disturbing their mind, really might obsess with a sound, like if it's a continuous sound, a vibration like traffic or something like that. Some people, myself included, can get very annoyed, but if bringing awareness and seeing how we cause ourselves suffering by allowing the mind to become obsessed with annoyance. Having smelt a fragrant, delightful scent, and having smelt a putrid stench, dispel aversion towards the stench, and do not yield to desire for the lovely. Well, a sense of smell often is will attract us to food, particularly if we smell. So it can bring up a lot of desire that way. Or for another, people wear scents, and that may be attractive to some people, or maybe very offensive to others. So so this can bring up really lust or hatred. These sense. This is a very primitive, actually. The sense of smell is a very primitive. We might not even know what's going on. There's like this, this subliminal attraction or repulsion to somebody or something because of odor. So just bringing awareness to that. Having enjoyed a sweet, delicious taste, and having sometimes tasted what is bitter, do not greedily enjoy the sweet taste. Do not feel aversion towards the bitter. So, while we're eating, not to overreact one way or another, whether the food is perceived as delicious and then noticing that we just want more, or we might get angry if the food isn't tasting the way we want it to taste. When touched by pleasant contact, do not be enthralled. Do not tremble when touched by pain. Look evenly on both the pleasant and painful, not drawn or repelled by anything. So it doesn't mean that we should allow harm to ourselves if we're, the pain is a it's a signal. So there's a certain amount of discernment. There's like discomfort, and you can be fidgeting constantly, but you can also notice if you're doing something that's causing harm to yourself. So yeah, so there's this balance of mind, not with all the senses. They're how we navigate in the world. Is how we experience the world. So taking it as information rather than as, something to get really upset or angry or causing additional grief for ourselves. Not drawn or repelled by anything. When common people of proliferated perception perceive and proliferate, they become engaged. Having dispelled every mind state bound to the home life, one travels on the road to renunciation. When the mind is thus developed in 6, if touched, one's mind never flutters anywhere. Having vanquished both lust and hate, O bhikkhus, go to the far shore beyond birth and death. So there's this Papanya Sanya. This is proliferated perception. So this is Papancha is mentioned in the honey ball. We've talked about this. And this is one of the few suttas where Papancha is mentioned also. So so the Buddha is emphasizing contact as one point to be aware of. But this potentially can lead to proliferation, which is what the Buddha is also pointing out here. So there's kind of like he talks about both sides of it, like what we should strive for, what we should be working towards, our awareness towards. But also, this is what we're trying to guard ourselves from, is this proliferated perception, the papancha sanya. So just being aware of the whole process, the whole where, and bringing ourselves back again and again, we can see, oh, I've really gone off on this whole tangent somehow, and then you might bring yourself back and just say, oh, it's because I saw, there was some sight, something. I mean, I think all of us who are doing this practice is familiar with this. I smell a kind of soap, and I'm in another country. I'm in Guatemala, and my aunt's house, because there's this kind of this smell that reminds me that, or diesel fumes or something like that. So it's like suddenly I'm some other place in the world because of a smell. This memory comes up, and then I'm thinking about something, and or a sight, or reading something, and then the mind can just easily go off completely on some other tangent, or it can start obsessing about something that we see that we want, or so this is the realm of the, he says, the common people. And so we just have to see where we are and not like get hard on ourselves that we notice our tendency to proliferate, but also to, if the more we start tracing back and seeing where the contact is, then we start understanding the process more and more. And then we're able to let go also. If we're like, oh, I got really upset, but this, all I did was, you know, I don't know. I can't think of a good example right now. I think all of you had the experience, but all it was this aroma I smelt. So I'll leave that. I don't have a, I do have a timepiece kind of. Oh, it's up there. So I've been talking almost a half hour. So I can open it up then for discussion. If anyone here has got a comment or correction or.
Sadhu, 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 anumodami. So thank you, Ayya, for sharing that sutta with us, as well as your reflections and teaching. And good morning as well to some online friends joining in, including Denise, Anita, Sarah, Angela, Paul, Lawrence, Elaine, and Kumu. And again, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the live chat. We do have a question from Kumu, who is wondering if there's a sutta that assigns the 6 animals specifically to each sense faculty.
I didn't notice it particularly assigning the one sutta. It's in the Salayatana. I could find it, or you could look it up. I don't know. But I don't know if that's particularly important. But if you like metaphors, that if you want to create it for yourself, that the crocodile is greed or something like that. But it could be whatever your predominant, what's driving you more, like all the sense faculties, the strongest one, and I don't know. They're all going after what they desire. They all want to go to their feeding ground, basically. Their domain is their feeding ground. So, but you might have fun with assigning a different animals a different sense gate. And just say, oh, there's the crocodile again.
That was actually the only question online so far, anyway. I don't know if in person, are there any questions? Seems like a short but very meaningful session. So if there are no further questions for a sutta study anyway, you're welcome to come back this evening to our channel for our monk chat, where you'll have a panel of 3 monastics here at Empty Cloud Monastery, who you can bring up any questions from this morning that you perhaps think about later on, as well as anything else related to Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And one of, or even all 3 of the monastics will share their thoughts. But for this morning, we can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, and enjoy the rest of your day.